Stroke, a common neurological disorder by Sarah Harn. Affecting more than 795,000 Americans each year, a stroke, also known as a cerebrovascular accident, CVA for short, occurs when the blood supply to part of your brain is interrupted or reduced, preventing brain tissue from getting the oxygen and nutrients it needs. One's brain cells can die in just minutes. Normally, the brain receives blood via two major pairs of arteries, the vertebral and internal carotid artery. You can see the vertebral artery at the bottom of the picture and the internal carotid at the top. These branch throughout brain tissue and supply your brain cells with a constant flow of oxygen, glucose, and nutrients necessary for all their functions. Now, let's take a closer look into the anatomy side of things. The specific deficits and potential for recovery depend on which portions of the brain are damaged by the stroke and the type and severity of the stroke. Strokes can affect the following areas of the brain: the brainstem, the cerebellum, and the cerebrum. Your brainstem is in charge of important life functions such as breathing, heart rate, blood pressure, and digestion. The cerebellum controls your coordination, your balance, and your posture, while the cerebrum is the center of conscious thought, perception, voluntary movement, and integration of sensory input. Strokes can be classified into two different categories, ischemic and hemorrhagic. Let's take a look and learn about what makes these two categories so different. Ischemic strokes are the most common, causing about 87% of all strokes. These occur when a blood vessel becomes blocked or clogged and impairs blood flow to part of the brain. Thrombotic and embolic strokes are considered ischemic as well. Thrombotic strokes are caused by a blood clot that develops in the blood vessels inside the brain, while embolic strokes are caused by a blood clot or plaque debris that develops elsewhere in the body and then travels to one of the blood vessels in the brain through the bloodstream. Hemorrhagic strokes are less common, affecting nearly 13% of stroke victims. These occur when a blood vessel that supplies the brain ruptures and bleeds. When an artery bleeds into the brain cells and tissues do not get oxygen and nutrients. In addition, pressure builds up in surrounding tissues and irritation and swelling can occur, which can lead to further brain damage. Intracerebral and subarachnoid hemorrhages are two types of hemorrhagic strokes. The intracerebral hemorrhage bleeding is from the blood vessels within the brain, while subarachnoid hemorrhage is bleeding in the subarachnoid space, the space between the brain and the membranes that cover the brain. Now, here are some symptoms that mean you may be experiencing a stroke. If you have blurred vision, confusion, trouble speaking or understanding, dizziness or loss of balance, numbness or weakness of the face, arm, or leg, normally just one side, or if you have a severe headache. Join me in watching Stacy, a 49-year-old woman who was driving home from work and could sense she was beginning to have a stroke. To help others see what was happening to her, she pulled out her smartphone and began recording. Watch to see what a minor stroke looks like as it happens.
April 2nd at 6:42, and the sensation is happening again. Just smile, they said. Smile. It's all tingly on the left side, on the left side. The doctor said to breathe in, breathe out, manage distress, and I'm trying. I don't know why this is happening to me. It happened this morning again, and when I left the hospital Monday night at like 12:30 in the morning. So now I'm taking a picture for an example of what happens. It's 6:43. My hand is hard to lift up and to touch something, touch my nose. Okay.
Speech and language. A stroke can affect a person's communication in many different ways, but most come in the form of one of the following conditions: dysarthria, aphasia, or dyspraxia. These can affect how you speak, your ability to understand what is being said, reading and writing skills, control of facial muscles, coordination and movement, breath control, and much, much more. So when a stroke occurs, what cranial nerves are being affected? Well, each case is different depending on the location of the stroke, but common nerves that could be damaged include your facial, which includes your facial expressions, your optic nerve, which is in charge of your vision, your oculomotor, which is in charge of eye movements, your vagus, which controls your vocal cords and swallowing, the hypoglossal, which is your tongue movement, or your spinal accessory, which controls your shoulders and neck. And you can also check out the picture there on the right to get an idea of where all of those nerves are located. Barriers are simply something that prevents or blocks us from being able to do something, so it can make it really difficult or nearly impossible to complete. A stroke victim could experience all three different types of these barriers. Number 1, functional barriers, which include maybe paralysis in body parts, numbness or tingling in the mouth, vision impairments. Or number 2, activity barriers, which just include your everyday daily activities, such as communicating and eating. Or number 3, participation barriers, such as your place of employment, being able to go to your job, driving to the grocery store, different things like that. A stroke, a common neurological disorder, but also a very unexpected disorder which can completely change a person's life physically, mentally, and emotionally. Julia Hernandez, a beauty pageant queen, at the age of 20 experienced a hemorrhagic stroke which paralyzed part of her face, which you can see in the provided pictures. Also, keep in mind that every victim is totally different, but here is a little bit about her. Here is a small glimpse into what Julia's life may look like after having her stroke. She needs to expect to have issues with speech, language, weakness, pain, fatigue, memory problems, vision problems, and depression. In hopes of experiencing a full recovery, stroke victims should seek out therapy and rehabilitation services. It is also important to pay close attention to one's mental health. A stroke can leave a person depressed and frustrated in their sudden lifestyle change. Julia found meditation really helpful when calming her anxiety attacks. Then also, it's just important to rewire your brain, get plenty of sleep, make sure you're eating the right nutrients, and keeping a positive attitude. All of these are steps in the right direction. So how can we help? Here are some speech intervention ideas. Number 1, breathing exercises. Plan out the breaths you'll take while speaking. Repeat the sentences and breaths to master when taking a breath is appropriate when conversing. Number 2, tongue strengthening exercises. These are going to seem really silly, but they're super helpful. So first up, stick your tongue out for as little as 2 seconds, pull it back, then repeat all over again. Number 2, open your mouth and touch the right side of the mouth with the tongue. Hold for a few seconds, then go to the left side. Hold for a few seconds, and you can repeat that as well. Number 3, try some word games. So these can be in the form of board games or computer apps to help challenge your language processing skills. And number 4, my favorite exercise, smile and then the kissy face. You're just going to practice those over and over and over again. And here's one of my favorite acronyms in the speech world. It's Be Fast, and this is for people who think that they could be experiencing a stroke. So is it a stroke? You need to be fast. And here are things to look for. Balance difficulties, your eyesight changes, your face weakens, arm weakness, speech difficulties, and then the last one's time, just because if you're experiencing a stroke, it's important to call 911 immediately and seek medical help. And that is it, my friends. I hope you were able to learn a little bit more about strokes today. Thank you so much.